Hello again. This is just a short one. Somebody actually asked me about some of the issues with the oils and the fats and stuff like that, and the information in relation to that. So it's just a quick one to cover those specific points. So, okay. So basically, it was Jared Matter, and he basically asked me about fructose, and I just basically told him, look, that fructose is basically, doesn't matter what source it comes from, fructose is fructose. And basically, I told him when I get back from my walk, which I just got back, I will quickly do, and I told him what I actually eat, which is pretty much, we're lucky in Tasmania, I can get organic, antibiotic-free, pasture-free range, which is good. That's an older video on fatty liver as well. So let's get going. Okay, oxidative stress, and looking at basically the bioactives aldehydes that come out of it. So, I'm not going to go through this study. I'm just going to cover these important points. So we're looking at PUFA. Okay, so ROS stimulates peroxidation of polyunsaturated fatty acids, PUFA, an oxidative event that is reversible, let's make that clear, through the reduction by peroxidoxin and glutathione peroxidase enzymes. What did I say earlier? These things, when you're in a low carbohydrate state, it's not accidental why people in low carbohydrate states, in keto states, on a carnivore keto or carnivore diet, when they're low carbing or sort of a low threshold of ketosis or swing in and out or whatever, we tend to generate more intracellular antioxidants like glutathione and stuff like that. So we're able to reverse. So even small amounts of damage that do take place, whether we cook stuff or whatever, small amounts, on our diet, which is not an inflammatory diet, we can reverse some of this sort of stuff. Very important that we understand this. Now, the lipid hydroperoxides, in regards that are generated with, when we're looking at these sort of unsaturated type fats, generated are unstable, because they're highly oxidized and highly rancid and whatever else, or become that because of depending on how they're produced, whatever. We're not going to go into all the details. I've covered that multiple times. I sound like a broken record repeating myself. Lead to a variety of reactive aldehydes. So there are differences between aldehydes which are enzymatic. These are non-enzymatic aldehyde reactions. So there are enzymatic ones, which I'm not going to go into, that have got a clear physiological requirement and purpose for happening. And then there is this sort of stuff where you've got really, these sort of states of lipid peroxidation, of these basically oxidative states that actually lead to these, really advanced reactive aldehyde products that go around, as Bart has explained as well, that rip lipid membranes and make a mess inside. And the more you have this sort of stuff in your diet, the more damage you will do to your cells, the more senescence or damaged cells you will create over time, and you'll age yourself faster and you'll become sicker faster and everything else, and certain things won't work. Okay? So, and if people want to basically look at aldehydes in detail about studies, Bart Kay has done, with Pim Donson, have done a lot of studies in terms of PUFA products and aldehydes. So they can tell you everything. They've got videos on aldehydes. They can tell you how damaging they are and what nasty little things they are. Okay, so we've covered that. So things that are highly oxidized will lead to these very reactive and dangerous aldehydes. So that's quite clear. So when you see aldehydes, think, well, this stuff has become very oxidized, very damaged in a number of ways. There's a lot of lipid peroxidation here. There's a lot of reactive sort of situation. And this leads to this really nasty reactive aldehyde state. Okay, so we're completely clear on that. Now let's move on to the next study. I will post, these will be in the description, so you'll be able to go and actually look at them if you want to your heart's content. This is the other study. I have shown this in the past, but I will show it again. Now we'll go right through here. I'm not going to go and look at these, and I'm not going to go and look at these. I have shown these in the past. They are on there. I'm just going to go to the actual tables themselves. Now, let's open up this table, and because I don't want these questions coming back to me. Now, I'm going to look at lard at the end. So let's look at these sort of things. So we're looking at sunflower oil, corn oil, canola oil, extra virgin oil. These are, your trans, sort of these are reactive products of, related to aldehyde secondary. We're looking at these. So look at the difference between extra virgin oil, olive oil, and sunflower oil. Not much difference. Okay. I want you to imprint this in your mind. You can see that sunflower oil and canola oil are not much difference. Sorry, and olive oil are not much difference. Okay, the ones that actually generate slightly, these actually products will have a higher index in terms of peroxidation because they're industrial products. Okay, but when you cook them, you notice the level of aldehydes and stuff like that, and those products are not that dissimilar. So keep that in your mind, really important, because I will make a point of that. So, because everybody thinks, and that will actually show the big difference between these things. Now, second table, look at this table as well. So we're looking at the differences between the unsaturated and the saturated in terms of, these sort of sampling points they looked at. If anybody wants to look at that, go right ahead. But I want to move to the final one. I'm not even going to bother with that. That's a sort of it's looking at, the machinery that actually detects all these sort of things, and so it's too technical for most people, so I'm not going to bother people with that information. For the people that want to actually, who love the technical stuff like me, they can go away and look at themselves. Okay, this is the table 3, the important one, where we're looking at these sort of important type of aldehydes and stuff like that. Okay, so let's really look. These are out of restaurant outlets. Okay, they've given them a code A, B, B, C, C, and D, E, F, G, blah, blah, blah. So these are, and then there's the total aldehydes down here. Now, these are important. Now remember, these are restaurant outlets. Possible frying medium identified, so the type of stuff. So this is in fryers, okay? So we're looking at basically these important type of byproducts. They basically are frying up chips, potato chips. So that's what they're doing. Very important to know. So these oils are recooked multiple times. This is not basically your steak thrown on a fire, cooked up, and all that. This is also not fat that's been sort of preheated to be made into a sort of a liquid and then, you know, sort of rendered and all that. So you don't even have the original structure that actually basically is far more protective that exists within animal fat. So you've actually broken that animal fat structure. You've literally basically created a product that basically, which we call lard, which we use in fries, or tallow or stuff like that, which are used in fryers multiple times to cook chips. Okay, now when we basically look at sampling, so we've got this first restaurant, you can actually see there's the amounts. There's the amounts. These would basically be at levels where they hadn't been used for very long. That's why they're very low. When we're looking at, you know, and look at the lard, trace. Majority is trace amounts. And remember, these are oils that are continually cooked with and used and all that. Now, in the E restaurant, there was a bit more in terms of lard. And I know why that happens, because we had a small business, a corner shop that we used to sell. We used to have tallow. We used back in the days in the 70s, and we basically used to produce our own fish and chips. And I can tell you, my father would actually replace the oils, and that's why we had a lot of return business, sometimes even lines outside trying to get in. Why? Because we produce really good fish and chips quality without, you know, the smelly, smoky or whatever. A lot of other arseholes out there, what they used to do is they would clear all the actual burnt part and then overuse the actual oils, and then again placed in their own sort of, you know, bit to dilute it to get rid of the smell. Even here in these cases where these people are basically reusing for far longer than they should the actual lard, it's still a hell of a lot lower than these companies that are basically using it for far longer. As you can see, with all the others at much higher. And if you use it within a reasonable level and you don't overuse it, you'll get very low levels or trace levels. And that's with continuous use in fryers. Okay? Now, if you were to, let's say, consume a piece of meat, or not chips, so you're not engaging the Randall cycle or anything, just something like that, yes, you'd get a bit. But it would be so low, and with upregulation of glutathione and all the other intracellular antioxidants, you'd be able to deal with this small amount. But if you're highly inflamed with a lot of these sort of levels of oxidative products and stuff like that, like you see in seed oils, you know, very high levels, when these are used for quite some time, you know, it's going to be different. And remember, these are trace amounts in cooked oil that's been cooked over and over again for days and weeks. Okay, so that's what that is. So this would have been basically the reason why it's much lower. It's probably been basically being used for probably a month or even less than a month. And that's why it's got trace. Potentially the reason why this shop, this restaurant outlet had much higher is because they'd probably used the lard for far longer, for multiple weeks, for, you know, for much longer, more weeks than normal. I can't remember the exact, should I ask Dad? Because I was a young kid at the time. And so I can't actually remember, but I do remember they were replaced. It depends how much you've cooked it as well, you know, so I have to ask Dad to get more detailed information. So don't hold me to that. I'll get some more detailed information. So even when you prolong the usage, you're only going to get, let alone a steak. I mean, for fuck's sake, you cook a steak, you cook it once. You're not overcooking it over and over and over and over and over and over again, like these oils. And also, it's actually within the actual structure. It's much more protected the way it is as a natural fat around the actual animal, as pork is. You know, once you render it like this and you break it down and all that, You will lose some vitamin E. You will lose some of the important elements that maintain the integrity that reduce. And still, we're talking about trace elements that the body, if it's in a low carbohydrate state, will create enough basically glutathione to deal with this. That's the important thing. So even if you're basically to take the steak, cook it the next day again, cook it the third day, fourth day, fifth day, sixth day, and then fucking eat it, you would still have much lower levels of trace levels, let alone if you're only cooking it once. So let's get this out of our head completely. Animal fats are not the same as plant fats when you heat them. They are very different, you know. I hope this really explained the things and demonstrated, because this is out of a fryer. These are fryers out of restaurants that they've actually got the information and all that, and they've actually looked at the results. So it's not basically Harry Soprano saying this or that, or somebody coming up with some arbitrary figures, or somebody in a lab, you know, doing some shonky sort of things. This is real world conditions where restaurants are using these oils, all these fats, and they basically then have researchers that have come in and taken samples and tested them. So, let alone if you're cooking just once with this stuff, there's a complete difference between the two. So I hope I've demonstrated to you that animal fats, even lard, even pig's fat, is not gonna fucking kill you. It's not gonna harm you. And if you're in a low, all foods, no matter what food, is gonna create some oxidative byproducts. It's a natural thing. Breathing creates oxidation. You know, wanking yourself creates oxidation. Everything creates some level of oxidation. I know I'm being facetious and a bit comical and humorous, but sometimes when I listen to these questions constantly, I'm going, for God's sake, you know, animal foods have been in our diet for a very long time. If our ancestors really had problems with these foods, we would have developed over time some level of adaptation of having super antioxidants way beyond what we've got today to deal with these things. Animals adapt in nature when they're exposed to a food for a very long time. We've been exposed to meat products for millions of years. The N15 data actually shows that when you're exposed for that long a time, you know, how long do you think we need genetic adaptation to a specific food, a cooked food? We've been cooking food, meat, for 1.5 million years, all hominins. I think that is more than enough time for adaptation to cooked meat. So, you know, please get over it. And if you still aren't able, you know, sorry, you know, I'm not going to build a bridge for you. Go and do it yourself. Anyway, I hope this has made it quite clear that animal fats are not the problem, and we need to stop demonizing the wrong thing. It's always been PUFA from seed oils, toxic shit that comes out of oil refineries and refined sugars. They're the two things in the diet that are basically on steroids in the last 100 years. Well, that's what's driving all modern chronic disease. You take those two out, most other things settle. Most of the stuff that I do, Bart does, Pim does, and many other people on YouTube do, is we actually provide you with strategies how to repair all the damage you've done or been on that shit. That's what we do. If you've never been on that shit, you've got nothing to worry. But if you've been on that sort of stuff, we provide strategies, supplemental strategies in lifestyle or whatever, to basically, or if you're dealing with addictions, like Pim does a lot of really good work when it comes to helping people with addictions. That is what you basically come to us for. You know, these things are should be settled. We shouldn't be basically arguing something that is evolutionary, that we've adapted to for 1.5 million years when it comes to cooked meat or cooked animal products. Get over it, you know, and if you can't, you know, bad luck. Anyway, that's it. So please don't bother me with silly questions about how bad PUFA from pig's fat is, because I will not answer your question, basically, because unless you can actually show me real good science demonstrating otherwise, basically you've got my answer. It's not. See you shortly in the next live stream.